I'm David Walters, and this is Innovatio. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Our podcast recently has been aiming to release an episode on a weekly basis. Please be sure to follow us across Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Today, we speak to Raphael Pirker, aka Trappy from Team Black Sheep, CEO and founder of TBS. The technology that's really defined for FPV and modelers like myself, and who have supported the upcoming protégés such as BanniUK and their journey within this industry. TBS products may seem to be only suited for the hobby industry, but we're seeing adoption in aerospace and military organisations that have seen the huge potential and also the quality in the hardware that TBS are putting out to enable them to adopt them for R&D projects. Right now, at this moment in time, there is a well-known feature film being shot where a team of creative engineers are even utilising the TBS technology to allow viewers to be fully immersed in the action, something that could only have been achieved previously with CGI. Almost impossible, some might say. Raphael Pirker, welcome to Innovatio.
Thanks for having me.
Mate, it's great to have you. Now, I know today that you guys have been out flying and doing some experimenting. Is this relating to one of your upcoming product releases, or have you just been out for a fly today?
It always is. Unfortunately, we don't fly for fun too much anymore. But actually, today we were just verifying some technology that we're going to release probably about next week or the week after, just to make sure that it works. And we're also we built a long-range platform that can. I haven't really, I'm downloading the logs as we speak, so I don't know yet how far it will fly, but the plan is to fly over 300 kilometers.
Wow.
So 150 one way and then 150 back.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's the platform that we're using, and it worked pretty well. So we'll see.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. Now, is that actually a platform that you're going to be, is that a generic platform you're using with your hardware inside, or is it a platform that you've designed like the Caprina or something?
No, actually for this flight, we were using the ZOHD Talon Rebel GT, I believe it is. So it's not the Dart, not the inverted wing style. It looks a little bit like a plane, but we found it ideal because you can actually, they have a massive equipment bay. And most of the autopilot tech has shrunk so much now that you can actually just fit it where the ESC used to be. So all the remaining area is basically our test bed filled with technology and batteries that we're using to
that's cool,
test.
Man. No, I like it. So, for that, I'm pretty sure everyone knows who Trappy is. You are quite infamous in the industry, but there are probably going to be members of my audience that aren't aware of who you are. So can you tell us a bit about your journey and how you got into FPV, and how did TBS come about?
We started in about, I think it was 2008, 2009, so a little bit over 10 years ago, just as hobbyists. So we were flying FPV. It wasn't really even called FPV back then. So I think that the term was coined in about 2010, if I remember correctly. And we were just flying around in the mountains with wings that we built by ourselves, and we hacked together some electronics, and we were trying out different things, always focusing on long range, just because it's way more fun in the mountains to fly at the top than at the bottom, because you always see the bottom. So yeah, that's how we came about, and it was about a team of up to 15 pilots that met fairly frequently and just drove to locations. Like we even booked hotels and like in different countries and people just started calling us Team Black Sheep, because everywhere we showed up, we used technology that nobody had ever seen before, and we did flights that nobody could have done before, and we produced videos that were pretty controversial back in the days, like flying um, in higher altitudes than 400 feet or just beyond visual line of sight. I guess even today it's still considered a gray area in most countries, but back then it was a taboo, so it was not to be done. And so that's kind of how the name and the moniker came about. And when three guys, so that's Chris, Remo, and I, started developing or maturing electronics for this hobby, we decided that would be a good name for our company.
Ah, fantastic. And I think, back at 2010, 2009, I think the regulators, etc., in most countries could not even conceive that with this technology that type of flying was even possible back then. And that kind of leads us on nicely to that court case with the FAA that we won't dive into too much because everyone is aware, and if you're not aware, you can Google it, you can find out. But I think, would you say it's fair to say that journey that you went on, and in fact the journey you went on with the FAA, because on the outcome of that was essentially them building a baseline of regulations to have commercial operators become, I wouldn't say legal operators because people were operating anyway and there was no guidance to have them. So it's kind of hard, and you prove that for them to call you an illegal operator. But would you say that court case helped kind of define the stepping stones for the FAA and the regulations that came following that?
Definitely, yeah. When we started out, the court case came about because it was a commercial shoot that I did. So after we did all these YouTube videos, we got approached obviously by a lot of very creative individuals that wanted to have these kind of drone shots in their next commercial or their next video or whatever. So that was how this came about. So I flew to the US and did a commercial video shoot there. And then it was kind of, because it was commercial, it was considered to be a full-scale aircraft. So that was the law, or the way that the FAA interpreted the law back then. And Brendan Schulman, my lawyer from back then, he pretty much showed very clearly that wasn't the case, and that was a wrong interpretation. Not only because it just wasn't, but also because it would create a lot of very weird situations where like you would have to have a pilot's manual in your aircraft, or because you were flying an unmanned aerial vehicle, you would have to be below 400 feet, and because you were flying a real aircraft, you would have to be above 500 feet. So all these kind of like nuances that came about in this court case, which were kind of like pointed out by Brendan, helped define the state or the recognition by the FAA that they needed to do something about legally certifying commercial operators for drones.
Yeah, it was quite funny actually when before I do a bit of prep obviously before all these podcasts. When I was reading about the court case stuff, and I didn't realise it was Brendan Schulman that was your legal advisor, who's now at DJI as for their legal counsel. So yeah, I didn't really put the two together until I was reading through the other day. But that's interesting. So moving on from that then. So we have seen FPV and the adoption of FPV by hobbyists scale massively. I mean, the TBS Lounge itself, 30,000 plus members now alone, I think.
Almost.
I think it's the biggest FPV group out there at the moment. And we've
seen...
It's
the most active one, yeah. Not the biggest yet, but the most active and the most members that are actively messaging and participating.
And I think that's where you set yourself apart from the other providers in industry. The TBS Couch Sessions that I think you host think it's once a week usually, sometimes twice depending on how excited you get. But the leveling of engagement you have with your end customers is fantastic. I mean, and you yourself, you're trying to run a company and you're a busy guy, also getting involved in the tech side. But the fact that you take time out, I think, is where the community appreciate that, and are able to have that level of kind of engagement with you. So, yeah, hats off to you, dude. I mean, that's a clever strategy and a smart strategy, but also, you're caring for your customers. I guess is the way.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really see them as customers because, like I said, Team Black Sheep got started with 15, 20 pilots, and every customer is exactly that same person. Like every customer I have, I can map him directly to one of those 15 people that we used to hang out with all the time. And so for us, it's just a matter of pushing the technology, enabling us personally and all of our friends to do these kind of flights. So that's what drives us forward. And that's also why we do these lounge sessions, because if we don't continuously communicate with anybody that buys our stuff, we will lose the edge in the innovation cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think what's great is I remember attending the UK's kind of first drone show at the NEC, and I think that's where I first saw the young protégé BanniUK coming up, and this little kid sitting in the tent flying FPV. And I think what was great is, as his skills developed, you guys then formed some partnership, I think it was. You're doing some sponsorship with him, and he was then flying with your gear. Well, I mean, what would your advice be to someone seeing that kind of technology being used at such a young age? What would be the footsteps you would advise others that want to come into this space to play with that kind of kit?
Well, just keep practicing, especially in drone racing. If you want to become a good drone racer, it's all about finger memory. So that's all you have to do. In terms of partnerships, obviously we're very interested in local people who want to help out other people. And BanniUK, I don't know if you've ever met him, like in a race, like physically in a race. He's I don't know how he does it, but he repairs his opponent's quads during the breaks,
that is sportsmanship. That is sportsmanship. Out and out. What a legend. That's
yeah.
No, that's a cool trait to have.
Exactly, yeah, and so he's kind of or he was a guy that people used to follow. I guess now he's kind of toned down, and I think he's focusing more on his commercial video shooting career, rather than the drone operating side. But back when he was a drone racer, he was very vocal, and a lot of people followed him for advice. So yeah, it's most of the pilots that we sponsor are very vocal within the community. They're not necessarily the best racers. Some of them are, obviously, but the sponsorship is not directly tied to the placings. It's more tied to how people perceive you and what kind of influence you are to others.
Yeah, no, that's smart. I like that. Okay, so then what would you say has been your highlight on your journey so far? When you first started out to where you are now, what's the thing that stands out for you, apart from the food in Hong Kong?
Food in Hong Kong is not great, or it's very expensive. You have either or. I don't know. I guess just the whole journey has been a blast. I mean, I left university without finishing a degree, and flew to Hong Kong basically on a whim, overnight decision, that I had to get out of Europe and to start this company, and then I found myself here in the trenches of Kowloon, opening up a company.
Ah, cool, man. So how big's kind of your team there at the moment? What sort of?
We don't discuss that publicly, but
okay.
it's a mid-sized operation.
Okay. It's interesting because you always obviously you see the Couch Session and your stuff and everything else, and you get heavily involved. And I always just wondered, what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe one day you can give us a tour of your place, and we'll take a look. No, that's cool. That's fair enough, man. I understand that. So I guess kind of then moving on, what are the next steps for you guys in innovation? what areas are you looking to start kind of really pushing the boundaries on?
Well, it's always the same things: faster, further, and longer. So, longer flight times, or further flights, and faster radio links. That's what we're focusing on. Or we want to be the fastest at all times. And yeah, I don't know. We obviously we have like long-term visions that I don't want to talk about too much.
Yeah, of course.
But in the next couple of weeks, you'll see some releases in terms of how our equipment communicates together better. So we try to strive for an ecosystem that, where 1+1 = 3. Hopefully. So that if you have our radio link, if you have our video transmitters, if you have our goggle receiver modules, they will communicate seamlessly.
Nice. Now, I touched on earlier about a couple of industry sectors that are using your technology outside of the hobby space. And I know you can't talk about them too much because of sensitivity, which is completely understandable. But were you surprised to see the adoption of your technology outside of the SP space, like by aerospace engineers and people doing these large R&D testings?
Not at all. I mean, we were actually in the first couple of years that we were testing pretty amateur stuff, I would say. Like in 2010 already, we were approached by the military, just asking like how are you getting this kind of range, and how can you fly this far, and how is this safely doable? So I mean, obviously it wasn't the US military, they had better technology back then than we did, but smaller militaries, that were on a budget. And in the meantime, I would say our radio links are pretty advanced for what is available to a consumer company. And yeah, so it's natural that there's interest for that, because in a war zone you have most of the how to say, the commonly available drones, all these frequencies are jammed, so like your GPS wouldn't work. 2.4, 5.8 is not going to work. Yeah. So with our radio links that are in the special frequency band of 915 and 868, they are pretty resilient to jamming, and therefore they're a good choice.
No, excellent. And it's interesting because I've seen some interesting use cases with your technology, and this is kind of going back to the hobby industry. There's a famous video on YouTube kicking about where a guy has got a radio controlled Jeep, fills it full of FPV, he's got 2-way audio, and he's driving this Jeep along the beach to chat up girls, and they're like, where is this guy, And I've seen your kit fitted to radio controlled model boats to try and get long range across like the water. What's the most unusual case of implementation of your tech that you've seen? Have you seen anything that's just made you gone, damn, I never even thought anyone would use it for that sort of thing?
Well, initially it was the high altitude balloon flights, where people drug up models into the stratosphere basically, and then just glide it back down, which was an awesome idea.
I think was that David Winstall? I think it was.
Yeah, David, but he did it with another radio link. But yeah, I mean, that was insane. He was like the first guy to really make a good HD quality video out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's fairly easy and legal, minus the gliding down part, obviously, because but sending the balloon up into space is actually legal, and it's fairly economical. Like I think like $1,000 or something will buy you everything that you need to get this done. So it's a really cool project that dads are doing with their kids.
It's funny you say that. My 5-year-old is currently sitting in the house, probably watching a YouTube video as we speak, and he spotted one of these balloon videos the other day, and he's starting to see drones like on some of the YouTube videos that he's watching, and he's like, "Oh, Dad, drones are cool. You should get one." I'm like, "Yeah, I fly drones for a living. It's what your dad does." And he's like, "Oh, they've got GoPros on." I'm like, "God, you're 5. How are you understanding what a GoPro is?" And then he saw this video with this balloon. He was like, Dad, we should put a GoPro on a balloon. And honestly, it's something I plan as a project to do with him, because I think that's just a cool dad-son project to go out and do.
Yeah, it's perfect, because there's so many things that can go wrong, and where where the plane is just gonna disappear and you have to look for it. We had a blast when we did it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, look, it's been great chatting to you. Thank you for finding the time to talk to me. And again, please keep innovating. What you are doing for industry and enabling us all around the world to get that feeling of flight is absolutely amazing. And I think if it wasn't for FPV and me, falling in love with the hobby and it now becoming a commercial thing for me, I wouldn't be where I am today. So yeah, dude, just keep inspiring others and keep innovating.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the support.
No worries. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, apart from the TBS Lounge, obviously, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
You can just chat me up on Facebook, or you can send me an email at trappy@gmail.com. I won't answer all of them. Like they have to make sense for me to answer, but feel free to email me.
Excellent. See, now what CEO would randomly just give out his personal email address?
Yeah, it's a personal one. It's not the business one.
No, fantastic. Well, look, from me, thank you today, and I hope our listeners have enjoyed listening to the conversation and hearing some insight into Raph and his journey within FPV. Thank you to our subscribers. Please continue to liking and sharing the content across Twitter and YouTube at Innovatio. See you on the next one.